Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Day in History, our nightly look back at a specific day in history, where we take a look back at that day, examine the events of the day, the historical context in which those events took place, and the historical ramifications of them. We also take a look at some people that were born on that day and some people that died on that day. As always, if you have not yet, hit the subscribe button, the bell notification icon to be alerted anytime I post new content, and tell a friend. And without any further ado, this day in history, March 10th. And on this day in 1876, Alexander Graham Bell uttered the first words transmitted by the telephone. And it was, "Mr. Watson, come in here. I want to see you." His assistant, Thomas Watson, was in the other room, and he wanted to show him that this contraption they had been working on for nights on end worked. And it transmitted a human voice between two receivers. After the successful test, Bell formed the Bell Telephone Company. In addition to the telephone, Bell had many other successful inventions, such as the predecessor to the modern-day air conditioning that he would invent later. He also turned a small journal from the National Geographic Society into the famous National Geographic magazine that we know today. So, the first phone call made on the telephone today. He called Watson on the telephone because he had his digits. Okay, I'm a horrible singer. I'll stop. I'll call you on the telephone, Watson. As I said the other day, sometimes in the births, we cover some really scandalous people because they have historic significance. And I had several to choose from today. Several that had just detrimental effects on society. But I chose one, but I could have chose the day he died. But I wanted to choose this day. Osama bin Laden, 1957, in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Every generation has that name that just stops them in their tracks. For the greatest generation, it was Adolf Hitler. For the baby boomers, it was whoever was in control of the Soviet Union at that time. The personification of this person is the embodiment of an enemy of America. And Osama bin Laden was. He was responsible, and really the Western world. He was responsible for the U.S. bombings in Tanzania, in Kenya, the USS Cole, and of course the September 11th attacks. He was the founder of Al-Qaeda. He was born in Saudi Arabia, but became stateless in the early 90s when Saudi Arabia expelled him from the country. He was born into a wealthy family. In fact, that's how he funded many of his early operations. I was in the 7th grade on September 11th, so that event is really burnt into my mind. There are several days in American history I remember everything about that day, and that in my lifetime, and that is one of them. Just a profoundly evil man that was responsible for so much death, destruction, and heartbreak. And the world is a better place that the United States military brought Osama bin Laden to a permanent end in May 2011. In an operation ordered by President Barack Obama. Deaths. Now, sometimes we cover people that had a lot of good. And this is one of them. Harriet Tubman died on this day in Auburn, New York, at the age of 90 or 91. We're not really sure the exact year or the exact day of her birth. But most people put it sometime in March of 1822. I mean, she died in 1913 at the age of either 90 or 91. But what Tubman is known for is being the founder of the Underground Railroad. And she led 13 missions on it to free 70 people from slavery. She went back to plantations after escaping to freedom to free other slaves and risk life and death. And, you know, this woman was a true, like, grade A person that you're like, I want her with me in the foxhole, because she was not scared of anything. Tubman, of course, will become soon, to this point, the only woman ever represented on U.S. paper currency, when she replaces a former slave owner, Andrew Jackson, on the $20 bill. Originally, it was suggested that she might replace Hamilton on the $10 bill, but the success of Hamilton, the play, and a renewed appreciation for the role Alexander Hamilton played in early America, and the fact that you can make the argument that Hamilton was an immigrant, led to the decision to put her on the 20, and also the statement it makes about America moving from honoring someone as controversial and as divisive as Jackson on the 20 to Tubman. There are people that argue that Jackson, there's two sides of Jackson, but you also have to admit, even though Washington was a slave owner, most people, there's not a real controversy about him being on the $1 bill. There's a huge controversy with Jackson being on the $20 bill. And if you're a Native American, that has to be especially demoralizing. So Harriet Tubman soon will become the first U.S. female represented on U.S. paper currency. Living female. I'm aware at some point that a real person. I will see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow will probably be a twofer video. I will have this day in history, and I'm probably going to say something about the Democratic primaries that occurred today and where I see the race at. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you all tomorrow.